Alright, so I'm just going to be going over some quick builds because I had a lot of friends who I was like, hey, what build do you go in? And they weren't quite sure. They weren't like totally concrete in what they were trying to do. And for a lot of people bought into the Elden Ring hype, and this might be their first Soulsborne game that they've played yet, or maybe they played like one or two. They didn't really make a build. Either way, this is just gonna be a quick, basically like mini guide to go over some of the easier builds to go through. Basically, I'm gonna be outlining probably on like 4 or 5 builds. The first of which is the pure builds. First things first, let's go over pure strength. Uh, Probably just go 40-50 strength. Um, Go ahead and level up your health, your endurance, everything else like that. That's all you're doing. You level up strength, you level up equip load usually. Big weapons. I'm going to list some weapons that you could go for right now. But yeah, 40-50 strength, everything else like that, whatever else you want to do, that's literally gravy. It is what it is. Yeah. Uh, Big advantages to strength builds. One, usually you have big weapons, big reach, really great damage, good CC in that you can hit enemies and they're staggered like crazy, or sometimes just flattened. Literally, that's the best thing that you can do in Dark Souls is just flatten an enemy, because when they get up, when you flatten the enemy, you can hold down the heavy attack, and when they get up, you immediately crush them with it. So. um, but yeah, the cons for strength builds, obviously, those weapons weigh a fuck ton. Like 20 or 30 pounds, and that's as much as like your whole armor set weighs. So if you want to use armor and a big weapon, you're gonna have to get up some endurance, which is gonna raise your equip load, which allows you to just put on any and all gear that you really want to use. But yeah, so pros and cons to that. Full dex build. Pros: a lot of damage. Usually, dex weapons have a lot of utility. Um, they it speeds up casting if you want to go spell swords build. Usually, it speeds up casting, helps you out there. Um, yeah, it's pretty okay. You get weapons like the Uchigatana. Weapon I'm using is a Dex Int weapon, which is literally just a Uchigatana, but Dex and Int. Uh, you get a bunch of quirky weapons. Some curved greatswords are much better for Dex than they are for strength, and they come with different move sets and stuff like that. It's a varied move set, and you definitely have a lot of weapons to choose from if you pick Dex. But that's going to lead me into the cons. Oh, I'm sorry. One last pro. Low weapon weight. Like, I think one of the heaviest ones is like a curved greatsword, and even then. But Uchigatana is like 7 pounds, like 8. Not sure, but very low. You can wear all the armor you want. In fact, a lot of people do Havels and use like a dex weapon to cause bleed, and that's how they do their damage. But yeah, that's just one of the things you do. Cons, obviously, you don't have any stagger damage, basically at all. Most weapons don't. Most dex weapons are very slash 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 slash. Like, you gotta do a whole bunch to proc any of their bleed effects, their side effects, anything else like that. And it's just overall, it can be it can be harder. It focuses you to focus more, because a strength weapon, you can roll an attack once and do like 900 damage, something crazy like that, once you get up to those big weapons. Whereas a dex weapon, using the same amount of stamina, you could do like 11 or 1200 damage, but you gotta do like 2 or 3 attacks, which leaves you more vulnerable. They also tend to not have the best reaches. Like I said, strength weapons kind of bigger, kind of longer, heavier. You can hit somebody like 7, 8, 9, 10 feet out. It's kind of crazy sometimes. Using like leaping slashes and everything else like that. However, dex weapons usually they have some type of quick slash and it can reach farther, but normally you're kind of up close and personal. But yeah, it's dex is definitely a harder beast to go for, but it can be very rewarding through things like bleed, proccing effects more if you apply them to your weapon, like frostbite, thunder, anything a boss is weak to. You can go ahead and apply that thing because they have like greases, balms, stuff like that. You can apply that balm to your weapon, and you can just like proc that a million times. So that's the pros and cons at pure dex build. Pure int, mage caster, or faith caster. Usually you want to pair these up with something else. You can go like a pure caster build, but normally you don't have the FP for it. Like up until you start hitting like 40 or 50 int or faith, which you can one-shot a lot of enemies with some crazy spells. But again, it's gonna take a lot of FP, so you're gonna have to think ahead, and that can be rough. But yeah, because of the FP meter and stuff like that, you have a finite amount of cast. You're gonna have to split things evenly through that, so it's definitely a harder playstyle to go for, but you can make it work. There are things, the Ashes of War. You can make a magic weapon, magic straight sword, faith, holy straight sword, faith, occult. I think occult is arcane now, scaling. But yeah, you can go ahead and make that, and that'll help you all out a lot with handling a lot of enemies up close, because it splits your damage, and it splits your scaling. Like, oh, you have like 12 strength and 12 dex, but you have like 50 intelligence. Well, that weapon's now going to have a B intelligence scaling, which means that it's going to be up there. You're going to be hitting somebody for like 3, 4, 500 damage. You're like, wow, really? Yeah. You can actually do that if you get the proper scaling going. So that's something you want to do. Faith, same thing. Usually people don't go pure faith anymore because FromSoft really kind of nerfed all of the lightning spells, which made faith really, really good. But now they've seemed to given them fire spells, which is kind of supplementing a lot of everything else like that. It seems like fire is kind of being the faith go-to, so that can be pretty good if you want to go for that path. The fourth build is quality, which some people go 27 strength, 40 dex. That's pretty good to use. Some people go 30-30. Some people go 40-40. It doesn't really matter as long as you have like 30 or 40 dex and then you get your strength up. It's what's known as a quality build. It allows you to use most of the weapons in the game as long as you don't have any faith or intelligence scaling. And allows you to make best use of a lot of weapons if you apply the quality ash to them. Ashes I'll go over in a second. Quality ash will give you all of that like strength and dex scaling instead of piss poor scaling on both. It'll raise the scaling but lower the base damage. So that's what those ashes are doing. If you're just starting out the game and you see like, oh, I can go heavy ash, like that'll be great for my strength build that I'm making right now, I would wait until the damage starts to actually outscale the base damage, because up until you hit about 30 in a skill, the scaling's not going to be high enough that the base damage isn't worth using. So yeah, quality builds, you're probably gonna leave it standard until you get like 30-30. It's a hard build to kind of get into, only because you have to put so many points into both strength and dex. But once you put the points into there, there's a reason why it's stuck around since Dark Souls 1. It's literally just a quality build. It's absurdly strong Because, like I said, you can use any weapon that you want. Oh, I'm bored. I want to use halberd today. Fuck it, why not? I got the skills for it. Let's go upgrade the thing. Buy some smithing materials from the maidens. You're good. You're done. Upgrade the weapon. Now you can use it. You want to use a greatsword? Go ahead and use it. You want to use a claymore? Go ahead and use it. You can use any weapon you want when the time comes for it. A boss is slow and big and weak to bleed. You can use a dex weapon. You can use that. You're good enough. So that's where that build shines at. Like I said, the cons are it takes a while to get into. It can be boring unless you're like really, really into melee, because you don't really use any spells. And again, it takes a lot of points to get into, so it can leave you have to make a choice between, am I going to level like vigor and endurance early on? And if I am, then my damage is going to kind of suffer at the beginning, or my damage is higher at the beginning, but I got to make sure I roll every single attack. And on top of that, a lot of the cooler ashes and stuff like that take a lot of FP, which you need mind to really go into. So, yeah, that can suck. And then the last builds are, of course, your spell swords. You can call them whatever you want. A lot of people call them different things. I'm just going to be going over both right now. You have your Dex and Int. That's usually a super popular one, Dex and Int, because Dex makes your spells cast faster, like I said before. So that's really, really good. Spells cast faster. You're shooting on spells like crazy. Something comes close, you got your Dex weapon. Literally go for it. That's what I'm going. That's why I'm going that. Usually I go high Dex, get some Int for a weapon buff, but I'm curious to see what magics they got this time. The very first magic was really, really cool, so I was like, all right, well, let's go ahead and see. Let's stick with this, because who knows what magic spells they put into the game now. And most of the time I just went Dex, and then I got screwed over because they didn't have like really good range weapons. This game also has good range weapons, so I might just be making a pure Dex build, or who knows, for my next character. But either way, yeah. You can go Dex Int, you can go Dex Faith, also good. You can go Strength and Int. Dark Souls 2 or Dark Souls 3. Dark Souls 3 I went Strength and Int, because there was I wanted to one-shot people in PvP. It was kind of funny. Just buff up a big greatsword, big curved greatsword, whatever else like that. Get to work on somebody, and then apply a magical buff, and then you're good. Basically go naked because of how heavy the weapon was. Yeah, so, but most of the time it's Dex and Int, and then the other time it's Strength and Faith, Paladin builds. The Strength, usually wearing heavier armor, gives you enough poise to, like, tank a hit or two, which allows you to get those incantations and Faith stuff off, and Faith has a lot of healing and everything else like that, so it gives you, that you can see where, why that's such a popular build. But yeah, so those are two. The pros are, like I said, you have a lot of utility. You got your melee and your magic. It helps you hit ranged enemies. You don't have to always fight somebody up close. Downsides are, you got to split points, and you have split damage. Split damage just means that instead of a weapon doing like 200 damage and has 60 scaling, now it's 160, 160, and both of them have 50. It sounds higher, but if an enemy is strong against magic, now it's weaker. Because before you were just doing pure physical and you were doing like 280, 290 in attack. Now you're doing split damage, and most of your physical is only coming out, and that's only doing a measly like 230. So now you're doing 60 less damage off rip than if you had just left your weapon base. So that can be a big, big con, and you won't understand how big of a con it is until you face an enemy that's, like, substantially strong to something you're using. You're like, I'm dealing a quarter of my normal damage that I should be. And you see somebody else fight the same enemy, and they're just destroying it. And it's like, what? Why? Oh, he's going a pure strength build. He's just slashing at the enemy. Doesn't care. Unga bunga. Yeah, so, in all of these builds, you can use different ashes based on how you want to do it. If you want to get your faith up to, or your faith up to like 40 early on, because you got like 12, you got like 18 strength to wield whatever weapon, and then you got like 40 faith because you want to use all the spells. You can make your weapon a faith weapon. You can put the holy, I think it's holy ash. I'm not entirely sure. I don't have one yet. I just have the magic and occult and everything else like that. But you can get that scaling going, and that'll help out a lot. Yeah, so it'll help you. Depending on what you want to do, makes that easier. Like I said, if you go 40 strength first, and then you want to start putting points into faith, you can make your weapon heavy using a heavy ash, and that'll help out. Using magic ash for if you have high int and low dex makes the weapon do more than if you just left it base, because it gives it a magic scaling, and your magic is higher than your dex, so that'll do more damage. Like I said, you can change these ashes and your weapons affinities and everything else like that on the fly. So if you find the enemy is strong to magic, you can turn your weapon into just a regular physical damage. Yeah, you'll lose that magic scaling, but now you'll do more damage because the weapon's base damage is higher. So they made it a lot easier, because before you kind of had to just, oh, I made my weapon magical. All right, well, I'm stuck with that. Now they made it so you can change that on the fly. Really good system. I like it a lot, but yeah. So it makes everything a lot easier. You don't have to really worry about messing up your build, because as long as you put points into something and do damage, you're always going to be fine. There's always something you can do. If you put a lot of points into strength, but you find out you actually like magic, put points into magic. Most of the time, people don't max out their character until like level 100 or so. Is like before it was 100, 110, 125, 150 for Dark Souls 3. It just, you have a lot more freedom. So don't worry about messing up your builds. As long as you can kill stuff, hit stuff, you're doing fine. Trust me. But that's it. Just wanted to go over anything else like that. Any questions, just hit me up.